Hi, I'm Sarah Sedwick. Welcome to my online mentorship group session for March 2018. Today I'm going to be doing a portrait demonstration by popular request. I usually end up doing a portrait demonstration about once a year for my online mentorship students. Today I'm going to be using a self-portrait photo reference. So yay, self-portrait time. It's always a good time. Let's see. So I have several of you in the group who just got done doing the sketchy 30-day challenge, and I have some others of you that have been experimenting with portraiture with and without using a limited palette. So feel free to pipe up with any questions that you have. As always, it's fine to interrupt me. Just unmute yourself and chime in at will. As you can see, I'm working from a photo on my phone. I just made it not sleep. You know how your phone usually goes to sleep after 3 minutes or something to save battery life? You can change that in settings, so it's just going to stay on. And this is highly technical, but I've clamped it to my drawing board with my favorite clamps. And I'm working on Arches oil paper that's just taped down to the drawing board. As you can see, I blocked in the portrait last night. I wanted to spend some more time talking about light and shadow and flesh tones and a little less time making you guys watch me fumble around with the drawing, although I am still planning on doing a little bit of preliminary fumbling, so don't worry about that. The palette that I'm using today, I did post pictures of it on Facebook before I made it all crazy. So you get to see what it looked like before I turned it into a flesh tone palooza. But this is a limited palette that is roughly based on the Zorn palette, which is my normal go-to when I teach portrait and figure painting, the Zorn palette. That's cadmium red, yellow ochre, and ivory black with white. That's the fairly standard version of Zorn palette that I use. But this is modified. I'm using pyrrole red, viridian, and yellow ochre, and white. White is up here. I also have added in ivory black. I'm not going to use much of it, but I want to have the ivory black there just so I can get really dark violets. This is the blue violet mixed from viridian and the pyrrole red, and it is very dark, but it's going to be pretty transparent because viridian is a very transparent color. I want just have just a little bit of ivory black, but I've painted with this palette without ivory black, and it's fine. I really like viridian as the blue substitute in portrait palettes. Okay, so I also have done a color chart showing the range of mixtures, the secondaries. We've got yellow, yellow, orange, red, red, violet, blue. Viridian is the blue. Blue, green, yellow, green, and this is a neutral mix from the three. And then I've mixed a range of flesh tones. I've got my light flesh tones here. I've got a warmer, a cooler, and a neutral. These are my kind of mid-tone flesh tones. Move it into the darks, and in the darks, I've got cooler darks and warmer darks also. And this is how I like to set up to get going when I'm painting a portrait. But really, whenever I paint anything with a 3-color primary limited palette, I set up the palette this way before I begin. I mix out all the secondaries. I lay out the 3 primaries in a triangle. I mix all the secondaries in between, and sometimes I'll even do another ring of tints. Definitely still trying to conserve some space in the center of the palette for the colors that I'm actually going to need to mix for that subject matter. And in this case, these are flesh tones. So you'll see that I've also kept separation between my light, my mid-tone, and my dark flesh tones, moving from light on the side that's closer to the yellows into the mid-tones in the middle, and then the dark flesh tones are on the side with the violets. And I just always do it this way. This works for me. And it's like everything else. I say, figure out what works for you and then stick with it. Figuring out just what works for you is half the battle in this scenario. All right, so I did this last night. It's totally dry. What I'm going to do as I always do with Arches oil paper, is give it a little rub with Gamsol before I start painting on it, just to cut down on the absorbency. Now you see it's kind of picking up my drawing a little bit when I wipe it with Gamsol, but that's okay because I kind of want to blur out my drawing anyway. Maybe I'll firm it up a bit. So I've been working into this block in of the portrait with pretty much my red orange, and now I'm gonna what am I gonna do? I think I'm gonna mix. Yeah, I'm gonna mix my red orange with some of that neutral brown that I made from the 3 primaries. Just darken it. What I want is not to have any white in whatever I'm using for my block in. It doesn't matter what color I use. I like to use something warm, but I don't have to use something warm. Just as long as there's no white in it. And I really want to check in with the tilt of the head, right? So many of you that were doing the sketchy challenge, we would talk about getting the tilt of the head, that axis line, center of the face, down through the center of the nose, that midline. The head is tilted this way, and it is. That axis line is this, and then the eyes cross it perpendicular. So the eyes are, you've got a head that's tilted to the side, and the axis is this, and then the neck is actually a bit straight. So that's exaggerated, but that's the tilt that I feel. Here's the ears, and I need to make sure I begin the block in thinking that way, but then I got to follow through with it. And that's hard when I'm getting into something like rendering the glasses. I have to really make sure that the glasses, even though these are rounded shapes, but they are generally following a curve. An angle that is not straight. And our minds, our wonderful survival brains that have been training themselves all of our lives to see the world in a way that helps our brains understand it and not in a way that helps us paint things, always wants to straighten things out. So watch that. I'm talking to myself right now. You know, I posted this picture on Facebook alongside the picture of the palette. Anybody that wants to draw, sketch, or paint from this photo of me is welcome to do so. Now, does anyone have questions about why I'm working in black and white? Why I'm working from a black and white photo? Well, we've talked before about how I don't like to work from photos for several reasons. I'm talking about portrait now. I don't want to paint still life from a photo ever. I'm actually going to be doing it soon, and I'll tell you guys the story about that another time. But I never paint still life from photo, and I never want to. But I do paint portraits from photos sometimes. Sometimes you just have to. Sometimes there are circumstances where you need to. But my work does not benefit. I want to figure out that jawline. That's also an angle. Oh God, paint on your phone. That's great. Shoot. Okay. The bottom corners of the jaw come right under the mouth. This is measurement by comparison, not getting out my ruler and my calipers. But if I kind of hold my paintbrush up to where the outer corner of the mouth interacts with the nose, it's just a little bit wider than the nose, bottom lip. I'm always comparing. You know, you all have seen me do this. When I paint a still life, I'm always comparing relative positions. All right, but I was babbling about painting from photos. I don't love to paint portrait from photos, but it is often necessary. I think that it's very rare when it's necessary to paint a still life from a photo. But with a portrait, someone could be deceased, they could be a child, they could be Olga's dog, you know, um, not sitting still, not able to be with us for whatever reasons. So, yeah, but my work tends to be I'm not as fond of it when I have to paint from photos. I tighten up. And the reason I tighten up is because I feel like I can get this close, I can get my nose in the photo and start seeing every little freckle and eyelash. But the truth is, all of that detail being in a photo for us is only an illusion. It's an idea of our minds that the photo shows us everything. And I'm talking about color also, and maybe especially in this scenario. So the reason I'm working from a black and white photo is because I don't believe that the color version of this picture has anything for me that is really going to be beneficial that I couldn't get from, say, maybe looking in the mirror. I got a mirror right over here. I could just go look at myself. I can turn around and look in the computer screen at myself. Not that that's any better than a digital photo, but guess what? I could just look at my own arm if I need some flesh tone reference while I'm working from this black and white photo. And then it's kind of like the way I do those painted sketches in black and white before I launch into a major still life painting for myself. I think that's kind of short, the upper lip there. The nose long. Having this black and white photo to reference from will just really let me focus in on value and form, how the face is turning at the edges, maybe where my overall patterns of light and dark are, and then I can basically make up the color from there.